This week, the agenda examined the role of government in job creation, parsed the possibilities around 2 Ontario by-elections. You got any predictions how those are going to turn out?
I think Tim Hudak's going to do well.
Boy, you're really going out on a limb saying that, aren't you?
Tomorrow I'm going to Niagara Falls, and tomorrow I'm going to Thornhill.
No kidding. You're going to,
absolutely.
You are door knocking? The Minister of Foreign Affairs is going to knock on doors in a
Bart
by-election?
Maves is my parliamentary assistant. Bart is strong, tough, effective. He's going to be a great member of Parliament at Queen's Park.
And moving right along. And we also weighed the work of community foundations this week on the agenda. But our week in review begins with Ontario PC Party leader Tim Hudak, who was here just the other day talking about his Million Jobs Act. 2 weeks ago, you announced this Million Jobs Act that you want to see introduced when the legislature returns next month. Give us the general thrust of what it's about.
Yeah, basically a plan to create 1 million new jobs. I'm talking about good jobs with improved take-home pay over the next 8 years. How do I do that? Get taxes down to encourage investment, get government spending under control, starting with an across-board wage freeze, make energy affordable, do more in the skilled trades, and more trade opportunities, put Ontario products on the shelves across our country and other nations.
How do you know that that recipe begets 1 million jobs?
It's the kind of advice I get. I've been meeting with economists, meeting with business leaders to talk about how we get Ontario back on track. We've done it before. I'm confident we can do it again because these are policies that have been tested, have been proven, they work, and we desperately need a plan.
Let's just look into that, shall we? Because we did have a discussion about this last night with some people who've been observing the job scene in Ontario, one of whom was Mike Moffat, who's a professor at Ivey Business School, Western University. I suspect has the same philosophical approach to these things as you do. And he crunched the numbers saying that you'll need to create 125,000 jobs per year to reach your 1 million job figure over the 8 years that you've promised. But he looked back at the past 37 years, and Ontario's economy, he says, creates on average 85,000 net new jobs. And most years, Ontario hasn't created enough net new jobs to meet your goal. So how is the 1 million jobs figure realistic?
We've done it before. I mean, look, I'm happy to have a debate whether it creates 850,000 jobs, as Mr. Moffat would get us to, or 1 million jobs, but we need more jobs. And I'm talking about the kind of jobs, too, Steve, that you can depend upon, not a minimum wage short-term job, but you actually build a career, buy a home, and raise a family. Let me tell you this, too. I mean, we have done it in recent history, and I was there at the cabinet table. I was part of a PC government in 3 different economic portfolios that between 95 and 2003 actually saw 1.1 million jobs added to our economy. So I'm confident we can do it again. My point of view is, let's get going.
I had a hunch you would say that, so I have another quote for you. Trish Hennessy and Cale Hatt from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, not necessarily philosophically in the same camp as you guys, say your 1 million jobs figure is based off employment growth during the Harris government years, and here's their problem with that. Here's the reality check, they say. Hudak is hearkening back to a period with fast working age population growth, when the baby boomers were in their prime working years, when their children were entering the labor force, and when there was significant labor force participation growth, particularly among women. At that time, the manufacturing-based labor market had yet to begin its disappearing act in Ontario. And the other little secret from that era, Ontario, under the Harris government, was able to ride the long economic coattails of a thriving American economy. And that's a magical carpet ride that cannot necessarily be relied on today. Your view?
Again, happy to have a debate about our jobs plan. Or at least people agree that it works. And I'm confident we can get to those numbers. Let me tell you why it's important. I'm not going to argue it is ambitious, but I'm confident that it's doable. And if we don't create 1 million jobs over the next 10 years, given population growth, given immigration into Ontario, we're going to hit European-style paralysis, stagnation, chronic unemployment. So, Steve, we have to do it. And when I look around the province and I see so many people who are out of work, I see young people who might have their degree or diploma from university or college, they're still home with mom and dad, or those families struggling to get by on a part-time job, we have no choice. So let's get taxes down, energy under control, get government spending under control, and let's actually surge this province forward. I'm confident we can do it over 8 years, 1 million jobs.
What the province actually needs, and what is missing from Mr. Hudak's plan, is a global strategy which is open and transparent. You know, what we are hearing from businesses is they want infrastructure investment so they can move goods and services. They want to invest in research and innovation so they can commercialize the ideas and improve productivity in the province of Ontario. And they need energy prices to come down so that they can remain competitive. And that's an across-the-board plan. What Mr. Hudak is hiding from in his plan is the right-to-work idea ideas that quite honestly scare investments away. You do not attack the social infrastructure, which makes Ontario a good place to invest.
We did ask him about that here, and he said, I'm not hiding it. I can't get that through the legislature, so I'm not going to put that in this bill.
Well, it's chasing his own candidates away. Right?
One.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that when you see experienced MPPs who are choosing not to run under the leadership of Mr. Hudak, like Frank Cleese and Mr. Sherman, you see that those ideas don't have traction.
Okay, let me pick up on one of the things you said there and put it to Mitzi, which is energy prices. He feels if you can bring energy prices down, you'll do some good towards job creation. Do you think the Liberals are vulnerable on this energy pricing stuff, because it has been a hard sell for a lot of people for a long time?
Well, you know, under Mr. Hudak or really the Harris government, we saw an extremely vulnerable energy system in Ontario. And what we've done is invested in the energy system. So when you turn on the lights, they're there and they can turn on. And I think that that's important, that we continue to strengthen our energy system so that we have a system that we can count on in the future.
I appreciate that, because you know, your position has been, if I understand it, there's been a decade of sort of neglect of the energy infrastructure, and you guys felt you needed to come in and invest in it. Having said that, too many people think prices are too high right now, and it's your fault. So, is he onto something here?
I don't think he's on to anything at all in terms of the investments that we need to make in Ontario to ensure that we have the infrastructure in place that we can rely on, that we can have a stable economy to attract companies, to create jobs in Ontario. And our government has a track record in doing so. We are the government that has weathered through the recession and recovered all of the jobs, plus 65% more jobs. 435,000 jobs have been created. And we're creating a very strong economy where we have a strong middle class that we can ensure that there are opportunities for people in this province.
Safety, health, environment, work, education, housing, arts and culture, civic engagement. There are lots of different ways to measure how well Ontario's capital city is doing. And every year, the Toronto Community Foundation takes stock of the country's biggest city and shares its results. Here's the Foundation's president and CEO, Rahul Bhardwaj. And Rahul, it's good to have you back here at TVO.
It's great to be here.
Well, if you pick up a paper in this city, you would swear we're going to hell in a handcart. But The Economist ranked 140 cities around the world, and Toronto came fourth in terms of livability. So we have quite a dichotomy. You see this. How do you gauge it?
Well, absolutely. You know, when you say, how are we doing in Toronto, it's really, we're getting the big things right. And that's one indication of it, and we can talk about some more of them, but you always have to balance that story out as well. Every big city's got its issues, but as we noted in this year's report, those issues are frankly unprecedented. These are some really different challenges we're facing. So that's the nature of the city. We're getting some of the big things right, but we're facing some unprecedented challenges.
Let's get into the weeds here. Some of the vital signs that you look at: people recycle. 94% of the people in this city recycle. And they do the green bin as well for the foodstuffs and so on. 87% do that. The downtown population, boy, is this different from American cities, eh? From 2006 to 2011 has increased by 300%. We are not abandoning the core. The public library system, its usage is up over the past decade by almost 20%. Of course, we have TIFF for culture, the Toronto International Film Festival. It's the largest, third largest now, in the world. So that's some of the good news. But you also refer, Rahul, to, quote, worrying cracks in the foundation. What does that refer to?
Well, and that really needs to balance out this fourth most livable city on the planet. And I might add, by the way, that the the 3 out of the top 5 on that list were all Canadian. So we're doing something quite remarkable here. But as we're seeing in Toronto, not everybody, and certainly, I guess, not enough people are really living in that fourth most livable city on the planet. And this is where we start looking at some key trends that have been happening. And one of them is clearly the divided city that is becoming, and it's around income inequality. And just to give you a snapshot of what that looks like, in 1970 in Toronto, we had about 58% of the neighborhoods were middle income. Now we're down to 29%. And if you take it even more granular, and let's say Scarborough, great area of town.
I got this right here. Let's bring this up. You can speak over this if you want. Bring it up, control room.
So 96% in 1970, 96% of the neighborhoods were middle income, and now we're looking at 83% that are in fact low or very low income. And if I start to put that in real terms again, Toronto now has 43% of our population lives in low or very low income neighborhoods. If you do the math, that's over 1 million people. And 1 million anything in Toronto is a very big number. And we're also starting to see that 2/3 of those people are in fact visible minorities. So this is a very different city that we are becoming. And when you look at the 35, 40-year trend, we've had a tremendous amount of growth and opportunity and great things that have made the 4th most livable city on the planet. But at the same time, we've created this enormous divide in the city.
I want to read something that was on the back cover of the Toronto Community Foundation's report that I looked at this year. It says you can have 3 houses, a few boats, a couple of exes, lots of kids, and a bunch of careers. You could own 5 companies, make $5 million, or go bankrupt 5 times and come back 6. You can have a collection of watches, a closet full of suits, a garage full of cars. You can travel to 50 countries on 7 continents, but you only get to have one legacy. Do we, Barbara, infer from this that you are really appealing to the ego of very rich people?
We probably are, but we also are appealing to the lack of ego of people that just want to make a difference. And we, in our community, have people who have a great deal of wealth and have all those things. But when they make their gift to us, the permanent gift, it's anonymous. All of our largest funds in Ottawa are anonymous.
Why?
I don't know. It's so odd.
People give money to hospitals to get their names up on those buildings because they want people to know.
And these are the same people. And they have their names at the hospitals. They have the plaques all over town. But when they work with us, it's usually a larger amount. And they like it to be anonymous. And they use those funds to support all kinds of wonderful initiatives in the community for which they don't want recognition.
It's the highest form of giving, isn't it?
It is.
Giving anonymously.
It is.
Why do people do it, Terry?
Just that sense of wanting to leave a legacy. They know that there's got to be more than the here and now. In many cases, they've been successful beyond their wildest dreams, and part of quietly giving back is to do it in an anonymous fashion. And it's very moving to have the stewardship and responsibility for making sure that that is well used and impactful over the long term.
The other thing I see is that people who have lived their whole lives in a community care deeply about their community. And it's sort of this granular, on-the-ground caring that defies the need to profile themselves. It really is just, this is what I've gotten from my community, let me give something back.
That's from your report that I took that from, and I assume the line, you only get to leave one legacy, I mean, that's meant to appeal to people's vanity, let's face it, right?
In part. You use the word ego. I'd put the word purpose out there. And there certainly are people with various sizes of egos, and we have donors with a lot of money with their funds, and some who have actually, by comparison, quite little. But what joins them, though, is their sense of working with us fulfills a sense of purpose on how they want to help build a better community. And we let them define that. Now, this was an ad campaign that you're referring to, and we were deliberately trying to be a little cheeky. We wanted to remind people they collect lots of things, but you only get one shot to go around, as it were, in life. And there's one chance to really make a really big impact in your community, and we're saying partner with us. There'll be lots of different little opportunities along the way, but if you're really looking for purpose and a way to make your community better, let us be one of your partners in making this happen.
Terry said the Young family in Hamilton gave the largest in your situation, right?
At the time in Canadian history, the movement has just had a $117 million gift in Calgary. So,
can you say who gave you the largest gift ever?
It would be anonymous, in fact. It was an anonymous gift.
Really?
Yes.
Can you tell us who gave you the largest non-anonymous gift that were prepared to put their name to it?
You'd be stretching my mind on that. And I don't know, in fact, if they want to be known publicly. But these are people who've been giving all across the city as well. And, you know, I understand this is philanthropy and everybody wants to focus on the numbers and the individuals. But it's the sentiment behind it. I mean, this is, you know, we're talking about community foundations in their 100th year. So 100 years ago in Cleveland, you're probably going to get to it, some smart people sat around and they said, how do we create a legacy for our communities? How do we create literally a pot of money and resources that some smart people 100 years from now will have access to actually help build a community or solve issues that we can't even dream of now? We're a part of that discussion. We're a part of that narrative of history on how to build community. And we're a part of a group of 192 who can go into our communities and say, folks, come along the journey. Bring your money, your time, your treasure, and your talent, and we're going to connect you to places in the city that you don't even know.
We know that governments want to get unemployment rates down. Whether they're prepared to do absolutely everything to get that done is another question. What's their role in getting the unemployment rate down?
Well, I think their role is more economic environment. So they shouldn't be out there. They can't directly create jobs unless they're going to be physically hiring people themselves, but it's creating the economic environment. So, for instance, in London, Ontario, there was a manufacturing company that we already have, wanted to open a new plant on the outskirts of the city. They set it up, they bought the land, everything was going okay. You know, the mayor and council were very excited about this. Then all of a sudden the city realized that they couldn't get water to the facility. They said, okay, well, we have to put in a new pumping station. This costs $6 million. Here's your bill. Those are the kind of things that we need to avoid, that we need to be sort of upfront, figure out what we need as far as infrastructure goes, and get the basic things right. Unfortunately, it's not very sexy. It's not very sexy to say, well, make sure that roads and hydro are hooked up on time, make sure the water gets out there. But when I talk to business people, that's what they complain about most, is just basic services not being functioned, basically not happening. So those are the things we need to concentrate on. But unfortunately, they're not all that interesting. You're never going to get a headline in the Globe and Mail saying, factory got their water hooked up. But really, that's what drives a lot of economic activity. And unfortunately for us in London, that plant ended up moving to St. Thomas simply because they couldn't get the services they needed.
Matthew, how are jobs created?
If I knew, I would try to trademark it. I was going to say that it actually comes back to going even further back to training and to in the education system, in schooling through JK to grade 12, and also the college and university system that is preparing students and young people to go out into the workforce with the skills that they need. One thing that was interesting, picking up on something the other Matthew said, is the businesses need to wrap their head around this notion that they're so used to governments training workers and businesses employing them, and now that model is sort of changing where governments don't necessarily train all the workers and businesses are having to do it. But I think that if college and university programs were actually instilling the skills that students need to get these kind of jobs that are out there, particularly if the economy in Ontario is going to head toward more high-level manufacturing, those are jobs that people need good training for.
Government's job in job creation?
So there are lots of things that governments can't control. The world is a big place. Ontario is a small place. There are lots of forces out there that are going to impact job creation, the unemployment rate. We have to be realistic about what governments can and can't do. And there is certainly a view out there that what governments can do is create the environment. Well-trained workforce, reasonable taxes, but good quality of life, and find the balance there. And that's obviously important. Government can't go out and create millions of jobs, but there are other things that they can do.
Really? Government cannot go out and create jobs?
I said millions of jobs. Governments can hire. So here's how they can create jobs, I believe. You invest in things that are really important to your long-term prosperity. So government can create jobs by investing in infrastructure. So we could make a really big decision to reinvest and renew our aging infrastructure in Ontario, for example. That would require long-term debt, but it would likely pay off in better productivity, better jobs over time, but of course it would also provide jobs in the short term. We can really invest in things like science and technology and research that provide immediate short-term jobs, but likely create prosperity over time. Government does have a really important job in making big strategic choices, and they can't, I don't think, or shouldn't, pick specific companies, but they can pick sectors and have strategic objectives. One of the most successful sectors in Canada right now is the oil sector and the oil sands. Billions and billions of dollars. I remember, you probably do as well, Steve, documentaries when I was in elementary school at the NFB about all of the riches trapped underneath the sands that unfortunately we could never unlock. But governments decided, and Alberta government, but also the federal government said, we're going to invest in research around unconventional technology, unconventional oil, try and capture some of that wealth. And that is a government decision to make a strategic play. And it may not have worked. I mean, Mike said there's risk. I mean, like in Ontario with in 2008, 2009 with the car companies. I mean, the Ontario government and federal government stepped in and said, we're saving these jobs. We're going to make a huge investment in Chrysler and GM. We're going to bail them out. Everyone criticized. Almost all of that money now has been paid off. It costs almost nothing right now for the Ontario and federal government taxpayer, but they made a strategic choice that the auto sector was so crucial to the southwestern economy, not just for the people who are employed there, but all of the other people who have jobs relying on that sector. We're going to save these jobs, create these jobs. That's part of government's job, to make strategic choices about where they're going to put their resources.
After it's all said and done, a lot of the public looks to government to quote-unquote create jobs. Have we concluded today that they really kind of can't?
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think it's unfortunate that governments get far too much credit when things are going well, and not nearly enough credit when things are going badly. And unfortunately, a lot of the things that you can really do to help employment are very, very long term. I think one of the best things that you could do is invest in early childhood education for children at risk. Well, okay, that helps whoever's premier 25 years from now. Right. So there isn't a lot you can do, but that being said, you take a poll, everybody cares about jobs in the economy. It's point one. So naturally, politicians feel that they have to do something there when really a lot of this is out of their control.
Ken, let me ask you what I guess might be colloquially called the $64,000 question that I suspect certainly I and a number of viewers find confusing, which is all those years ago, 9/11 took place. The Bush administration made a decision to go into Iraq, ostensibly to root out the al-Qaeda influence, which it thought was behind 9/11. They got there, they discovered there was no al-Qaeda in Iraq, and now suddenly, 13 years later, we discover that al-Qaeda is actually behind a lot of what's going on in Iraq these days, the massive uptick in violence. How did that happen?
Well, I think you've actually laid it out very nicely, Steve, which is that the Bush administration invaded Iraq for a variety of different reasons, but you're absolutely right that one of them was that many folks in the Bush administration were absolutely convinced that Saddam Hussein was tied to al-Qaeda. In fact, I will go farther than that. From my own conversations, my own arguments with many of them at the time, they were certain that al-Qaeda was, in fact, ultimately a creation or a subsidiary of Iraq. They just did not believe that these kind of transnational actors could exist on their own. They saw the world as a grouping of nation states. They assumed that al-Qaeda had to be backed, if not ultimately controlled, by some state entity, and that was Saddam Hussein. So they went in absolutely convinced that al-Qaeda was tied to Saddam Hussein, was supported by Saddam Hussein, and that therefore 9/11 was ultimately connected to Saddam Hussein. That was wrong. That was wrong at the time. And any number of people, myself, but more important than myself, the intelligence community, the United States intelligence community, was saying very vociferously that the ties between Saddam Hussein's Iraq and al-Qaeda were exceptionally tenuous. They might be there, but they were not meaningful in any sense. Many in the Bush administration disregarded that, but let's remember others had other reasons for going into Iraq. I mean, let's remember that while the intelligence community was right ultimately that al-Qaeda was not tied to Iraq, the intelligence community was wrong about Saddam's decision to rebuild its weapons of mass destruction. The intelligence community believed that Saddam had decided to reconstitute its weapons of mass destruction. That was another reason that the Bush administration decided to go into Iraq. But you're absolutely right. There were no ties. There really was no al-Qaeda in Iraq before the United States invaded. And once we invaded, and in particular, because we made no effort to fully occupy the country, to secure it, to rebuild its security capabilities, and rebuild a functional political system immediately after invading, we opened the door to al-Qaeda. And then worse, and this kind of gets us back to the current situation, we helped alienate Iraq's Sunni community. We treated them as if they were all Saddam's accomplices or al-Qaeda's accomplices. We helped exclude them from government early on. In many cases, we put some of the worst elements in the Shia community in charge of Iraq. And so it was not surprising that many Sunnis came to see the United States as the enemy and saw al-Qaeda as their only ally. And so a country that really had no al-Qaeda presence suddenly became a real pocket of al-Qaeda resistance.
Janice, I'm going to read something from The Economist from just a few days ago, and then I want your comment on it if I could. Control room, please. The violence Mr. Assad has used has driven reason and tolerance out of what was one of the Middle East's most integrated countries. Well over 100,000 people have died and millions have fled their homes. The hatred is spreading to Lebanon and Iraq. The Geneva Gathering cannot drain such an ocean of suffering and wrongdoing. It is built on the premise that Mr. Assad will relinquish power through a transitional government. But why should he? He believes he is winning. He is holding his own against rebel attacks or even gaining territory. Your view, Janice, how strong is Assad's position today?
It's certainly stronger than it was even 9 months ago, Stephen. It's stronger for two very different reasons. It's stronger because Hezbollah committed its forces on the ground to a ground battle, urged on by Iran, and that made a real difference. It's the old boots on the ground argument, and it's Hezbollah boots on the ground. The second reason, very different one, Assad is now the international community's partner until those chemical weapons leave Syrian territory. So the United States, Russia, everybody who made that deal has a vested interest in keeping this guy in power until that deal is done. He bought himself a new lease on life.
That is fascinating because they've been obviously trying for months and months and months to get rid of him, but now you say they've got a vested interest in actually keeping him there.
Absolutely.
Until the deal.
Until those weapons have actually exited Syria through the port, gotten on the ships and are destroyed. He's the one that can guarantee the safety of those weapons as they move through the country, that they don't, in fact, end up in a malicious hands. And so he's there for at least until that deal is done.
Do you know how long that will take?
That'll take, now we're supposed to be through by the spring of this year. We're already a month and a half behind schedule. There's another year at least involved here.
So he's bought himself a year.
He did.
Huh.
More than a year.
How would you characterize the nature of the talks going on in Switzerland between the two sides?
It depends how low you can let your expectations go. All right? So if your expectations were very low to begin with, as mine were, then Lakhdar Brahimi, the UN mediator, I think has done really well. And what has he accomplished, Steve? He's made, I hope he's made sure that there's another meeting a week from now. Other than that, the only thing that has come out of these talks is that the Assad team that is representing him in Geneva has agreed in principle that they accept the terms of reference which say, as you said in the introduction, there'll be a transitional government.
So they are on course to have that happen?
They've agreed in principle. That's different from being on course to have it happen. Here's what they're doing. They've agreed in principle, and at the same time, they're dragging their feet, they're advancing on the ground, they're reclaiming more and more territory, and they want to drag this out as long as possible in the hope that they will have extended the scope of the territory they control.
So, to use a Canadian expression, Assad wants to rag the puck.
Exactly right.
Drag this out as long as possible.
That's right.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety. They're all on our website, theagenda.tvo.org. They're on our iTunes channel and on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/theagenda.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.